Hey everyone, what is going on? What is going on? It is December 31st, 2020. And I have someone that you may know, you may not know, but you're going to be introduced to it. It's my brother from the same mother, Kenston Henderson. How's it going?
Yeah. Good. How's it going?
Ah, man, just living life and loving what's coming. Loving what's coming.
It sounds like you living with life. I mean, that's what it sounds like.
Oh, here we go. You can't.
Sounds like it already.
You allowed to do personal branding on my stuff. You allowed to do personal branding.
Listen, anytime anybody walking in purpose, they're living with life.
There we go. Well, folks, I just want to welcome you to the Hot Takes podcast, where we're always seeking to be humble, open, and transparent. This is the final episode of 2020, and who better to end the year with than somebody who has been in my corner from the beginning of this boss year, and growing my business, growing my self-esteem as a business owner, and just to talk about our year in review. And when, again, just like the message that went out about today's episode, if you haven't taken time to evaluate what it is that you've done this year, then that's just like going down a road with no directions, right? You don't know where you've been, so you don't know where you're going. Now, if that's your MO, no judgment, but I like to know where I've been, because if it was good, then I like to repeat those things. If it was I like to evaluate why it was just and what desired effect did I actually want to get out of it. But then what are some things that, you know what, they're just going to stay in 2020. And I have an intention to build new muscles, to grow new muscles, to build new relationships and all those good things. But we're going to get into all of that in today's episode. But Kenston, there's something we do as trainers, y'all. So we're both trainers, we're both coaches. And there's something that we do an exercise, right? At the end of any training, at the end of any workshop we do. How many of y'all are familiar out there? And just real quick, put in the chat where you're at, where you're listening from, where you're watching from, because we want to engage you. Because as we talk about year in review, I want you to put in the chat. We want you to put in the chat things that you've done to reevaluate, to evaluate your year, and give yourself some pats on the back, show yourself some love. I'm sending you some air hugs. But what have you done to review your year? So we like to do more of, less of, keep the same, right? I say more of, less of, keep the same. And so, Kenston, what are some things that you, without a shadow of a doubt, we're going to start here, you're going to do less of in 2021?
The hope is that I do less of explaining to people. Can I start it off? Can I start off?
Do it.
All right. Can I do less of explaining to people why all lives matter?
Go ahead. You ain't freeze. Say it again for the people in the back.
Why saying all lives matter is just disrespectful. Can I do less of that in 2021?
So you don't want to do no explaining. You don't want to do no explaining.
No, I want people to actually research and learn from themselves and watch all the other podcasts we've done together and watch my TEDx, watch all that information out there and become better. Because I'm tired.
You can't be tired, man, because we got more work to do.
I know we do.
I'm with you. I am definitely all about doing less of the explaining, and I want to do more people getting in the ring and putting on their overalls to do some work. Yes. As it pertains to just the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as a trainer, right, my thing is organizational development, culture, people engagement, human capital development. But one of the biggest things that, again, like you, I'm going to do less of is trying to explain why certain work is important. Not to say something else isn't important, but the fact that we're having to have this conversation around race in America, around the validity of people in your workforce not feeling seen, not feeling heard, not feeling valued in 2020. The fact that we've had these polarizing things happen this year, I want less of the explaining and more of the actual partnerships around being an ally. But then more of those allies presenting their platforms and being advocates. That was a tongue twister. But going from allyship to advocate as it pertains to engagement, I want less of the explaining and more people get into the fight around this people development conversation. And I know one of the things I'm going to keep the same. I'm going to keep introducing and making myself available for amazing people. And some of them I want to shout out. Kim, what's going on from South Carolina? I want to shout out Lisa Peasy, who's out there, rock star, business development, business owner, strategist. You got Andrew Metz, who's up north, probably snowed in right now. Of course, I got our sister from another mister, Tamiko, who is solid as they come. And then, new professional, got Karan out there. And then, of course, got Chi out there. I want to continue maintaining meeting dope people this year. That's what I want to sustain. I want more of, and I want to keep that the same. I have met between podcast guests, between rock star people that have changed my life. And I know that's strong, y'all. I know I put some pressure on y'all out there for anybody who's going to be new to my network, that you have to match the energy of life changing. But that's the stuff that my year in review, that's why I'm standing here right now. That's why y'all see me so pumped up and excited about 2021, is because every relationship that I met, particularly the second half of the year, had a profound effect on where Boss is today, where I am today, as it pertains to my confidence and my energy. Kenston, what are some amazing people out there that you met this year? And that ain't all the people I met. So I'm gonna shout out some other folks. So don't feel slighted. I'm gonna shout you out before the end.
Listen, I'm not going to shout out names, but there's been a lot of relationships that I've made over these last several months that, as it relates to, a lot of the work I've been doing with a lot of speaking on diversity, inclusion, and implicit bias and so forth. And leaders who have chosen to lean into the conversation and, like you said, chose to be, whether it's anti-racist or allies and advocates, and they really leaned in, and I just commend them. And so if they're watching, I commend you and high five you for taking that step to even, inbox me to direct, to call me to say, hey, I need to, lean in, and so that my other leaders in my organization can lean in. And so it's been a beautiful thing. So I want more of that in 2021. I want more of those types of conversations of, how can we make this a part of our value statement, right? How can we make these a part of our values? How can we implement these things to make sure that everybody's, like you said, feels seen, heard, valued, and, not just having a seat at the table, but taking a step further to being able to speak at the table, but then taking another step further to actually being listened to and heard, and being implemented because of that opportunities that, again, leaders chose to lean in. And so, I'm looking to, just to value and foster relationships that really people really, they want to give and take, right? There's a give and take, and not just me giving all out and using all my energy, but us as reciprocal, right? Those relationships are definitely needed in the workplace and personally. And so that's what I look to get more of, even from a personal standpoint, is greater relationships with people who are continuing to try to who develop themselves to be their best. So
and it's funny, Kenston, that you and again, y'all, we brothers, we business partners, we friends, and this is unscripted, y'all. We talked about what we were gonna talk about. Just make sure we weren't rolling off the cuff too much, but we kind of wing it sometimes. But you just teed me up for one of the questions about when people think about why do I need to look back, right? 2020 was such a heavy year. 2020 was stressful. 2020 was hard. 2020 was tough. And I don't ever want to leave 2020 and 2020, right? Somebody I heard I was online and I heard somebody else mention that they were riding past a store the other day. It was probably a couple of weeks ago, and the store already had Happy New Year on the outside. Like they was like, I'm done with 2020. Like I'm putting up Happy New Year stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons that I sit and I review, again, going back to, so I know where I've been, but just what you said about relationships, about the people that I've met who have played a substantial role in, I had a moment, y'all, as a business owner. This wasn't all peaches and cream, and I'm not manufacturing this motivation. This is authentic and came from a place of meeting my community, the people who I was supposed to have in my life during this stage of understanding and this stage of evolution. And one of the early conversations and people that I am appreciative for having this conversation with me pre-COVID. And the funny thing is, he just posted in the LinkedIn chat, Philip Williams. So Phil was an early conversation that I had with a professional. But then I have Dylan Ali, who was early on, and we're talking through understanding our why, understanding how we could support each other. But then another mainstay in my life who has been a master connector is Nikki Hughes, who I met, again, this is pre-COVID, at an HR event at State Farm Arena at a Hawks game. But then fast forward to when I was going through a moment of darkness right around the murder of George Floyd, was Ginger Johnson, who's out in Oregon, master connector, who just opened up her entire Rolodex to me. And it created, connections with, Lisa, Giselle Chapman, and all these other awesome, amazing folks who have sewed into me as much as they believe I've sewn into them, but also just really leaning in on, Kyla Charlemagne, Melissa D. White, Alora Chestikov, Nick Dillon, Paul Tripp, all those people who helped connecting the dots kick off in the spring. And so all of these people, when you talk about what 2021 has done for me in review, connecting with Tamiko, who connected me with, Karen, who, again, I have some of the quotes on the wall behind me, but then another Karen Huller, who we do C3 with. So I wanted to look back and I wanted to highlight all of those people who I'm pulling forward into 2021, because I don't feel like I need to pay them back. I desire to, just because of the authentic connection that was made with that new network. And again, I call them community now. They're not just connections or just networks for me, but they're community for me. And now that I'm serving in some other organization volunteer capacities, those relationships are paying off, that all of those things are coming forward. And I am excited about what's happening. So that's why I do my review, because I want to highlight those things and pull those things forward, because those are W's. Meeting people like that are huge wins for me that give me energy. Another Julie Armette, amazing coaching. I'll just shout this one out. Never would have thought I would have met somebody, because, hey, y'all, I was a matchmaker early in 2020. Don't tell them about I was a match. But I met amazing coaches and trainers from IPEC through that experience. So yeah, why do you do reviewing, Kenston?
Listen, because like you said, you gotta look back and see where you're from, because setting goals in 2019 without the expectation of COVID was really something great to see, that even though COVID took place, I was still meeting and knocking out goals as if COVID ever happened. And so I always speak about the necessity of speaking life, regardless of when we're setting goals, they haven't come to pass yet. And so I truly believe that it's for us to speak those things into existence, and then go from there. It's a necessary part of goal setting, but we ain't gonna talk about that. So, but it's necessary to look back at our goals, because it continues to position you for where the big goal, where you're really trying to get to. And I was just excited that there was exponential growth during 2020. You know, some people say like, you know, all my goals has been blasted. I had to blow them up and start on the whole process. But no, I just pivoted a little bit, and it turned out all right. It turned out all right. And so again, it's just doing what you need to do to make sure that you're still moving in the same direction. It may look differently, but that's, you know, that's why I have to do a year in review. So.
I love that, man. And it really, when you talk about the year in review, and both of us are huge proponents of looking at not only what happened, but I really love when I have the opportunity to really assess, right? And really do kind of that after action review, right? Of really breaking things down, because we have a tendency sometimes to, and some you said is settle for certain results that have and things that have happened certain ways, and so we're content, right? It's for some cases, if you look at my business, if you look at the things that have happened for me over the past several months, on all accounts, people would say I had a successful business year in spite of everything. But I know what I wrote down. And like you said, to your point, writing down those goals and then actually grading on yourself on that scale. But again, one of the things I always tell my coaching clients, this year in particular, right? We've never lived this year before. So adding some grace to that evaluation, particularly if you had to pivot, and all of us had to pivot in ways of ramping up in certain areas versus another. And so one of the biggest things that I evaluated for myself and kind of after action reviews was that moment in time back in June where I had to really assess what I was doing as not being helpful. And it took getting quiet. It took some other coaches for me to engage with. Again, I mentioned a whole host of people who I needed to have conversations with to really assess if what I was doing was good for me and for what I was supposed to be doing. And there's something I said a couple weeks ago, particularly around anybody who's a business owner, anybody who's working on a job right now. And me and Phil had this conversation in depth, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I was in that mode back in June, and where some imposter syndrome a little bit was coming in about, God, did I really feel this in my spirit that I was supposed to step out here because things ain't flipping? But then putting things in perspective, again, the reason why you do that after action review, the reason why you sit yourself down and put things in perspective, I hadn't did any business development. I knew people, but I hadn't did any business development for me and my organization. And so Lisa, she, again, being the master strategist in business strategy, folks that I meet, they would tell you like, hey, business development takes time. In the midst of COVID, I was like, well, hey, what's some that I can maximize on? Well, I ain't got nowhere to go, so I might as well jump on Zoom calls with folks and reach out and LinkedIn stalk folks that I felt like was in alignment with what I desired to have my business be and look like, and who I desired to be in partnership with. And so those after action reviews really helped, particularly around the sustains, but also the improves. And the improves identified some training gaps that I had, some capacity gaps that I had. And one of the biggest things that I really, I'll call it a feather in my cap until I got to turn in an assignment, but going back to school to get my PhD. But the courses have informed and have been in support of everything I desire to do business-wise. It pertains as a business professional in organizational leadership. So I absolutely love that decision from a learning perspective for me. And Kenston, what's next for you?
Man, what's next for me? A lot. But listen, I want to go back real quick as far as even contentment. You know, we've seen over, in the 2020 year that businesses who chose to be content, they were either they didn't last or they needed a lot of help to get pulled forward. And really, one of the things that I put on my list for going to, you know, the next is staying flexible, staying teachable, right? How many of us out there had to get flexible, you know, had to become more flexible, had to become more teachable. You know, we may have already had some tools in our tool belt, but it like you said, you had to do some additional things, whether it's getting coaching. You know, I was sitting on a lot of Zoom calls or a lot of, you know, again, some learning opportunities, learning and development opportunities for myself. So that way I can continue to move in a confident and steady way. And so, you know, things that are going on next for me, as far as, you know, goals for 2021 is really, again, forming the great relationships with more people, fostering those relationships, building those, cultivating those relationships. But then also, I'm looking to, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and say it because we're out here, and so those who are listening hold me accountable. That I'm looking to release another, at least 2 books in the new year that are focused on, you know, HR, that are focusing on speaking and training. Some of those areas that I love to be in, and probably going to release a children's book too, or not a children's book, but a parenting book that really dives in deep on how to parent like a boss when there's a racial crisis. And so a lot of the speaking I've been doing even this year, 2020, is helping parents teach their young people how to be anti-racist. And, you know, the parents got to do the work first, so that way we can model the behavior that, you know, we want our children to have. We can tell them to be respectful, but are you modeling that as a parent? And so I really want to engage in that in the next year. So, but a lot more speaking, you know, a lot more speaking. That is a lot of goal for 2021. So how about you?
Well, one, this is a preview, y'all. So Hot Takes is going live every single week on Mondays, every single week. So I am dedicating myself on Mondays to 52 episodes. I already got to put on the calendar. So if you're a client, a potential client that's out there, no, noon on Mondays are not available to do development. But I really want to open up this platform to a particular group of people, because I want to be intentional about honoring what I desire as a business owner and developer, but I want to honor the art and science of professional coaching. So if you're a professional coach that's out there, and you're deep into the craft, and you feel like you are a person who can set the stage, set discovery for people, groups, whatever that is, I want to have coaches as guests. If you're a person who you're in the space of leadership and organizational development, I want you as a guest. If you're an author, if you're a speaker, all things people development, those are the types of guests that I want to have on the Hot Takes podcast. But here's my one requirement. Only practitioners. I only want practitioners. I only want people who got their hands dirty, who keep their hands dirty because they diving in. No shade to the people who aspire, but I want the people that's practicing. I want the people that's in it, that's doing it, that's evolving, that the action and activity is informing how they make adjustments with each client. And I'm talking about from business development to the actual interaction. Because again, being humble, open, and transparent, that it's not always rainbow sunshines and pixie dust. That's not what this podcast is about. But this is for practitioners to come show the jacket with the bullet holes, but you know how to sew it back up. You know how to sew it in because hey, you got to put it back on and go back to work. Right. Yeah. So that's the platform that I'm doing. And so that's going to be huge for me. And not only hosting the podcast 52 different times, I'm desiring to be a guest. And so just like you desiring to ramp up on the speaking, and shout out to NAAA HR Atlanta. because I am the new VP of plans and professional development, but I'll be kicking off our programming year as the speaker on January 13th for our first chapter meeting of the year. So we're going to have new board member inductions, but then I'm going to come in talking about how to be a hot leader. And so got my wing woman out there, Kalitha Johnson, who is a beast, trainer, development consultant in her own right. So she better come on the podcast. I'm volunteering her. She has to be on the podcast. But that's the way that I'm going. And then speaking at national and HR national, I'm going to be on their national conference in February. And so ramping up, speaking things into existence is what I have going for me in 2021. Kenston, for people who, because we're going to do a whole goal segment for the C3 community next week. Y'all don't get none of the goal setting stuff yet. For people who desire to really just speak on what's next for themselves, for others, what's next as it pertains to how do we move forward in a very practical way? Just one step. What would you give somebody as just a first step?
First step, which is kind of a huge step, is really think about, as you reflect today, throughout this day, in the next probably week or so, is just really reflect on what you want to see your life like. Really writing down your vision statement for yourself personally, professionally, is key. And then you can surround your goals and task with that. And so really just starting off with, where do you see yourself, or where do you want to see yourself in the next year? And that will be very, very critical to helping you set the other parts of your journey for 2021. So,
man, I love that as a next step. I would say next step. One thing that I mentioned, but I really want to go back to it, is really all around. The first step is grade yourself, really sit down and respect and honor the wins in 2020. Mm-hmm. Right. I know a lot of it was hard. I know a lot of that gets shine, but if you're watching the replay, you made it. Regardless of the scars, regardless of the bruises, regardless of the sweat, regardless of the tears, you made it. And because you made it, you have an opportunity. They always say you only live, YOLO. You only live once. No, you die once. You live every day. And so if you're living, make the moment count. Make every single moment count. If 2020 hasn't taught us anything, that first step is to count what's happened and then make an intention. That's what we say in coaching. Make an intention. Be intentional about the life you desire, but then go after it. Right. Yeah. And again, what's your famous quote, Kenston, about if you're trying to do it alone?
You're doing it all wrong. You're doing it all wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
Doing it all wrong. So evaluate yourself. But one thing, find out who your community is. Find out who's in your corner. And then go from there. But be amazing. Be amazing each and every day you get the opportunity to breathe in new air. We are living a perpetual state of today's. I know that was deep. Y'all gonna have to think about that one. Y'all be like, what? Just repeat it. Yes, you're always in today.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Kenston, thank you so much, bro. Like I told y'all, this is how the year started for me. With me and my brother talking through things, particularly around boss, particularly around leadership, particularly around development. And again, one of the things that I love and appreciate about looking back is my team. And again, if you're doing it alone, you're doing it all wrong. And so me and my team, we literally are having a goals call right after this. Why? Because they need to know what I've written down as goals so they can help me win in a new year. And if I win, they win, because that's extra stuff that they get, which I know they excited about. But get you a community, check in with people, get you a battle buddy or two, And they got Christian Spears on there. He's new to the community. And he's about to be an educator. He's an educator. He's a coach. He's a former veteran, and service member, all that good stuff. So I love, and appreciate all that you've been to me, bro. And I love and can't wait for seeing all the wins that you kicked the year off with in 2021. So, hey, y'all, stay connected to the Hot Takes community, and always in every conversation, seek to be humble, open, and transparent with every single interaction. And just like that says behind me right there, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So keep shooting. Keep shooting. Act like you got the green light every single day. So peace, love, and hair grease, and I'll see y'all soon.